And good morning. It is 4:37. Checking farm news now as the southern and central plains struggle with wet weather and a slow wheat harvest and quality problems that are starting to show up in winter wheat. This means the milling industry might be looking to the northern grown spring wheat to blend in higher quality. That also means a price premium for wheat growers later in the season.
What I'd like to remind farmers is they're doing the math on trying to make that decision about whether they apply or don't apply, to be sure that they also include the potential quality adjustments or quality discounts that often appear in the market. The winter wheat crop right now is under some pressure. We know that there's going to be a wide range of quality coming out of both the hard red winter wheat and the soft winter wheat areas. That leads to the question, what about the discounts for spring wheat? And I suspect my forecast, if you will, is that we're going to see some pretty heavy quality discounts coming into this harvest season. And again, the wheat market's now looking to the northern plains up into Canada to try and look for some good quality wheat that they can use for milling and baking characteristics. So as farmers are making that decision on whether they spray or not, be sure that you not only look at the base price, but more importantly, look at those potential discounts.
Now, Frayne says getting that premium for higher quality spring wheat, though, might require some patience, meaning not until into winter before there is a shortage of high quality milling wheat. Dozens of consumer business and food groups have filed recommendations with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They did that Monday, asking for tighter regulations of genetically engineered crops. USDA has said it is considering changes to the way it regulates biotech crops, and they set a public comment period that expired yesterday. The agency had proposed a regulatory rule in 2008 after being cited in a government audit for holes in its oversight. Criticized in court rulings, and after high-profile GMO contamination events in the Pacific Northwest that led to food recalls and trade disruption. Well, the USDA never finalized that proposal. They withdrew it earlier this year. Meanwhile, legislation introduced in April, sponsored by Kansas Congressman Mike Pompeo, being considered in the U.S. House. It calls for national labeling of biotech products and gives final authority for labeling of products with biotechnology or GMOs to the Food and Drug Administration. It by law would allow mandatory labeling on those foods only if they are ever found to be unsafe or materially different from foods produced without GM ingredients. Last week, the House Energy and Environment Subcommittee held a hearing on the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act of 2014, or it is known is H.R. 4432. It's time now for Stewardship Wednesday, staying ahead of the curve in animal care. Well, whether you call it biotechnology or genetically modified, there is opposition to federal labeling requirements from both sides. Activist groups claim GMOs are not natural. Opponents to a mandatory federal labeling law, or worse, individual state labeling laws, say any law would be confusing to consumers. NDSU's Extension Livestock Stewardship Specialist says the industry is partially at fault for this problem because of what they've named it.
And so really GMO stands for genetically modified organism. I mean, how scary of a term can you actually use? And really all it is to make plants, in this case plants, corn and soybeans, actually more productive and make those plants utilize less water and actually less herbicides and make it more productive and more efficient system so that people and animals have more food from less acres. So there's never been any scientific evidence whatsoever that somehow GMO foods that come from plants that are modified have any safety issues, any health issues at all. It makes for great talking points. It can scare people. But really, there's no need to be afraid of those GMO crops. There just isn't. And so the Chipotle deal is another marketing avenue. And we've genetically changed things over the years in almost all species. Dogs, cats, horses, cattle, pigs, chickens. We've changed their genetics, and we've done it through selective breeding. On the plant side, they've done it with just a little bit more technology. But we've done it for the greater good, really.
Now, I don't know who to attribute this to, but I recently saw a quote that said, genetic modification of crops is simply an advanced form of plant breeding. And that's been going on for thousands of years. Last week's integrated pest management traps in North Dakota discovered a soybean aphid. Certainly not much to worry about just yet, but there have been a few cereal aphids in wheat. Is that a concern?
Aphids on cereal crops too, we're seeing very, very low numbers, like 10% incidence. And they're really hard to find out in the fields. So the wheat crop is especially advanced early. It's early for the crop to be, heading already in the southeast. So I'm really not expecting to see any aphid problems, at least in the southeast.
And that's, of course, in the wheat. Jan also says that the recent heavy rains also were beneficial for growers as they likely washed aphids off the crop and drowning them. All right, it's 4:43. Right after the break, we're coming back, checking on those thunder boomers up in the Northern Valley and the big ones down in South Dakota. Forecast for farming coming up.